Look at me. I need you to put your phone down, straighten up in your chair, and hear this, because what I'm about to tell you ain't just politics. This is personal. This is that moment at the family reunion when somebody thought they could talk slick, and the quiet cousin finally stood up and said, "Nah, not today." Steve Harvey pause, silent stare, adjusts suit jacket. America thought it could lean on India, thought it could squeeze, nudge, and pressure its way into obedience, and I tell you something. India didn't yell, didn't throw a fit, didn't flip the table. Jaishankar looked across the room, smiled real calm, and said, "Oh, so that's what we doing now." And then, baby, the whole game changed. You got to be kidding me if you think this is just about tariffs and visas. This is about respect. This is about power. This is about who gets to tell who what to do in a world that don't belong to just one family anymore. Because right now, as we speak, the United States has slapped massive tariffs up to 50% on key Indian exports under this so-called reciprocal trade move. And when you hear reciprocal, don't let that fancy word fool you. That's like your neighbor borrowing your lawnmower for 5 years, then charging you rent when you ask for it back. Long stare at the audience. Eyebrows up. Now let me break this down real simple. America said, if you sell to us, it's gonna cost you. India said, okay, but that okay wasn't surrender, it was calculation. That was chess, not checkers. Matter of fact, that was Chinese checkers. Because while Washington was busy raising the toll booth, New Delhi quietly started looking east and north and said, we got other roads. And don't even get me started on these H-1B visa fees. Reports out here talking about numbers so height, tens of thousands, even whispers of 6 figures per worker, that companies are looking at the paperwork like it's a hospital bill with no insurance. For Indian tech professionals, that ain't just a policy change. That's somebody telling you you can come to dinner, but you gotta pay for everybody's plate. Steve leans in, you feel that sting, that's intentional, and here's where it gets real uncomfortable. Because this ain't happening in a vacuum. At the same time all this is going on, there's tension in South Asia, a fragile India-Pakistan, and ceasefire that needed outside pressure to hold together. Trump steps in, plays the broker, takes the credit. Fine, that's politics. But from India's point of view, that's like a distant relative jumping into a private family argument, then telling the whole church they saved the marriage. Pause. Deadpan stare. Audience murmurs. India's leadership looked at all of this together. The tariffs, the visas, the pressure, the public posturing, and said, we see you. And instead of begging, instead of posturing back, they started doing something far more dangerous to American leverage. They diversified. See, when one store raises prices on you, what do? You don't stand there arguing in aisle 7. You go across the street. And that's exactly what India started signaling. Stronger energy talks with Russia, supply chain coordination with China, local currency trade, long-term contracts that don't need a nod from Washington. Not announcements with fireworks, quiet moves, the kind that make everybody else in the room suddenly stop laughing. Steve adjusts his tie slowly. So if you're sitting there thinking, why should I care? I tell you why. Because when 2 of the world's biggest democracies start treating each other like rival in-laws instead of partners, the price shows up everywhere. Your phone, your job market, your energy bill, your stock portfolio. This ain't foreign news. This is kitchen, table news wearing a passport, and right now, America thought it was applying pressure. What it may have done instead is teach India how to live without asking permission. All right, now stay with me. Don't blink, because this is where we stop laughing and start understanding why this whole situation went left. Look at me. This didn't happen overnight. This is years of pressure building up like a pressure cooker at Thanksgiving dinner, lid rattling, everybody pretending it's fine. Until boom, America says these tariffs are reciprocal. That's the word they keep using. Sounds fair, right? Like splitting the check evenly, but here's the truth: the U.S. already runs massive leverage through dollar dominance, financial systems, and market access. When you add a 50% tariff on Indian goods, pharmaceuticals, industrial components, specialty steel, electronics, you're not just balancing trade. You're telling Indian manufacturers, your cost just went up overnight. Good luck explaining that to your workers. Steve pauses, squints, slow nod, and India did explain it to itself. Indian exporters started losing competitiveness in the U.S. market, while American importers quietly started paying more. Inflation doesn't ask for a visa, y'all. It shows up anyway. But instead of running back to Washington with a complaint letter, India asked a different question. Why are we still this dependent? That's the part people miss. Now let's talk energy, because geopolitics always follows the gas line. India is one of the world's largest energy importers. For years, the expectation from the West was simple: buy from who we approve at prices we're comfortable with. But when Russia came under sanctions, India didn't panic. They negotiated. They bought discounted Russian oil, refined it, and kept their economy stable while everybody else was arguing on cable news. Steve leans back. You may not like it, but that's not rebellion. That's survival. And China. Oh, now don't twist this. India and China are not best friends. They're more like two cousins who don't sit next to each other at the wedding. Border disputes, military standoffs, real tension. But when trade pressure from the U.S. increased, suddenly supplied, Shane conversations started sounding more practical, not alliances, options. That's the Chinese checkers move. You don't have to like the other players. You just need a path to the other side of the board. Now add agriculture to this stew. GM Crops. The U.S. has been pushing hard for broader access for genetically modified agricultural products into India. India's been saying no, or at least slow down. Why? Because India has hundreds of millions of small farmers. One policy shift can wreck livelihoods. From India's point of view, that's not trade. That's social stability. Steve does the stare. The kind of stare that says, you ain't thought this through. So when America applies pressure on trade and migration and agriculture and diplomacy all at once, what do you expect the response to be? Gratitude? No. Strategic recalibration. Now let's talk about those H-1B visa fees again, because this one hits nerves. Indian professionals dominate sectors like IT, engineering, healthcare, tech. They're not taking jobs, they're filling gaps. But when the cost of bringing that talent over explodes, companies do math, and math don't have feelings. Jobs start staying offshore, remote hubs expand, Bangalore grows, Hyderabad grows, Silicon Valley stagnates. Steve taps the desk. You see it now. And then there's the India-Pakistan ceasefire situation. The fact that it required U.S. intervention at all reminded India of something uncomfortable. Even regional stability can be used as leverage. Trump stepping in and taking credit might play well domestically in America, but diplomatically it sent a signal. India heard that signal loud and clear. You're still treated as a regional issue, not a global equal. And Jaishankar, that man didn't clap back on Twitter. He didn't storm out of meetings. He did something colder. He doubled down on strategic autonomy, India's long-standing doctrine of not being tied to one power bloc, a just suit jacket. So when people say America tried to undermine India, it wasn't with insults. It was with systems, with rules, with pressure points, and India's response wasn't anger. It was insulation, new payment mechanisms, local currency trade, long-term defense procurement diversification. Energy security first, approval later. This ain't emotional. This is math. This is risk management. This is a country saying, we're not putting all our groceries in one fridge anymore. And here's the part nobody wants to say out loud. Once a country learns how to function without you, your leverage never fully comes back. Long pause, Steve Harvey stare, audience silent. Now ask yourself, if this is the why, what happens next? That's where we're headed. Because this is the part where everybody asks the same question at the cookout. So what happens next? Look at me. This ain't the end of the argument. This is the part where folks start moving furniture around the house. What's next is a slower, quieter shift. No press conference fireworks, no dramatic walkouts, just results. India is going to keep trading with America, but not depending on America. That's the difference. You'll see more long-term energy contracts locked in outside the dollar. You'll see defense purchases spread out so nobody gets to hold the remote control. You'll see India pushing harder on domestic manufacturing, tech stacks, payment rails, and food security. Not because it wants to challenge the U.S., but because it doesn't want to be cornered ever again. Steve folds his hands, serious, and America's gonna have to decide what it really wants. Does it want partners or obedience? Because in 2025, those are two very different things. You can pressure a smaller economy, you can sanction a fragile one, but when you start squeezing a country with 4 billion people, nuclear capability, a massive consumer base, and options. Baby, that's like trying to yell at your grown child who pays their own bills now. They might still love you, but they don't need you the same way. Now for the everyday folks watching this ain't abstract. If you work in tech, pay attention. If you invest, pay attention. If you care about prices, supply chains, and where your future job might live, pay attention. Because as talent flows adjust, as trade routes rewire, as alliances loosen and tighten, opportunity moves. And opportunity don't send a forwarding address. Steve points gently at the camera. For Americans, this means competition is coming from places that used to be partners only. For Indians, it means more responsibility because autonomy ain't free. You gotta build, regulate, protect, and deliver. No excuses. And for the world, it means we are officially in a multipolar era where no one country gets to set the rules alone and act surprised when others read the fine print. Now let me give you some real Steve Harvey motivation before we go. This is for nations and people. You don't win by yelling louder. You don't win by flexing all the time. You win by being prepared when the room changes. America applied pressure. India adapted, and adaptation. That's power that don't need applause. So whether you're a country, a company, or just somebody trying to build a future, you better learn this lesson. Don't put yourself in a position where someone else gets to decide your worth. Long pause, famous Steve Harvey stare, slow nod. If you understood what you just heard, don't just watch. Think, talk about it, share it, because the world ain't breaking apart. it's rearranging the furniture. And some folks just realized they don't own the house anymore.